Hello out there, this is toy customizer Wakeangel2K1, or Wakeangel2K1 if you want to save yourself the keystroke, and 2K sounds cooler than 2000. So if you've read the title of this video, you know that it's another Yu-Gi-Oh related custom. And like my last Yu-Gi-Oh related custom, the Harpy Lady, it is an entry to a contest on Figure Realm. So by the time this video is going up, it'll actually be a couple of weeks after it's been shot, because according to the rules of Figure Realm, you're not allowed to reveal what you created until after the voting is complete, which is a perfectly respectable and understandable thing. Like that way, the popularity of the customizer won't influence the votes they get. Like, oh wow, that's my favorite toy customizer, and he made this figure, I'm gonna give him a 5-star vote. Or, oh, this guy made a toy, oh dear, I hate that guy, he's a douche, I'm gonna give him a 1-star. You know, like corruption like that is eliminated from the process by simply not knowing who made what until the voting is completed. That way every entry wins on its own merits, which is a good thing, very good. It's a good way to run your contests. Alright, so, Yu-Gi-Oh! Not a lot of you may know this about me, after all. I'm the Sonic guy here on YouTube, and I also talk about Transformers, but the simple fact is I'm actually a huge fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have been ever since I was a sophomore in high school. This is my Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. This tin box, I've had this thing since I was a teenager, since I was still in high school even. In fact, this is my deck. It's been customized and I've kept adding new stuff to it, but yeah, this is the same deck and the same basic strategy that I played with all the way back then. I mean, this Dark Magician card, that's one of my originals from way back when I was like 14 or 15. Of course, that's not to say this is some old school deck that hasn't been updated in years. I mean, I put the new stuff in here too, you know. Whenever a new card comes out that fits the strategy. Yeah, unfortunately, it's the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game doesn't seem to be working as well as it used to. To keep up with the anime's new trends of bringing out these impressive new monsters, the game has just been getting kind of broken. Like have you seen the new Xyz monsters? And actually, this goes all the way back to the Synchro monsters from the 5Ds era. It all became about getting out this one uber monster that's so broken it basically wins the duel for you. It's not the same level of competition and strategy that it used to be. And I know you can still build theme decks, but even the theme deck idea has kind of been damaged. Like, one time I bought a booster pack and I could not add a single card from it to any decks I had because every single card in it was designed to form a theme deck with other cards from that series, and they were useless for any other deck. So you like it would be like if you were to, do you remember the Elemental Heroes deck? Like maybe that's a bad example because Elemental Heroes team up with other Elemental Heroes. It's like the black. Anyway, yeah, that's my idea. It's like the Blackwing monsters, or things like that. Like, they're cards that they're really powerful and broken when they're used together in the series they're in, but you know, separately they're pretty much useless. They don't do anything by themselves. It's not like the Amazonas monsters. Like you have the Amazonas Sword Woman. She has that cool special ability that whenever battle damage is inflicted during a fight with her, your opponent takes it instead of you. So your opponent thinks they're really awesome for getting out their 5,000 attack mode dragon, and then you run this little weak 1500 into it and he loses all of his life points. You know, that's something you don't need the rest of the Amazonas cards to do. But I'm not here to stand up on a soapbox and talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm here to talk about my passion for action figures. See this Celtic Guardian? This is the Celtic Guardian action figure. This is a souvenir from my very first convention ever. I believe it was Icon 2005, back when I was still in college at Stony Brook University. Icon was held right on our campus, so of course it was the first convention I ever went to because I literally lived next to it. In fact, I volunteered to help at it so I wouldn't have to pay for a ticket. It was really cool. Back then, this dude only cost me $1. I got him out of a bin, and he was missing his sword. Actually, making this sword for him might very well be the first custom thing I ever did for an action figure. Isn't it funny how that works out? Of course, the articulation of these Yu-Gi-Oh! Action figures is very limited. I mean, he has cut shoulders that are limited by his armor. He has a swivel head and a swivel waist. Doesn't really accomplish much in the way of posing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the sculpt and the paint job are great. And the Celtic Guardian is my favorite monster because he kind of looks like a Norse version of Link. Like Link combined with Thor. I really like the Celtic Guardian's look. But yeah, like, you guys remember last Halloween when I made this, my Harpy Lady? I always wished that Yu-Gi-Oh! Action figures could be more like this, where they look like the characters from the card game, or the anime if you prefer, but, you know, they had standard articulation like you'd be able to find in retail toy stores nowadays. I think maybe you can find some nice articulated elemental heroes, but you know, it's like it's really hard to find anything that's not a statue or an old figure with only a couple of points of articulation. Because I don't know. I mean, I guess they figured card game enthusiasts and action figure enthusiasts just didn't cross much back then. So with that said, today's custom figure is going to be the Dark Magician, and I'm going to talk about how I came to make this guy. Any of you in the audience who actually sat through the 7-minute intro, I thank you for letting me bare my soul to you for a little bit. And for the rest of you, let's go into the custom process of making the Dark Magician figure. Now, the Dark Magician has had many looks over the years, from the red Alcana suit to the Shonen Jump promo with the black costume, the Evolution, and the Legend of Blue Eyes. But the version of the Dark Magician that I'm making here today is the one that you would have seen in the original Yu-Gi starter pack. It's the one that he used in the anime, and it's the one that I feel is the most Dark Magician. By which I mean it's the most iconic Dark Magician look, what people will think of when they first see the card. So, that said, actually getting a reference, just this picture is a little bit ambiguous because it's all posed up, but there was this really cool Kotobukiya statue that was made. It's only a statue, but this picture in particular allowed me to see what the Dark Magician's costume looks like from multiple perspectives. So, when you're making a figure, a statue is the best thing that you can base it off of. You know what, they actually sell a statue that looks very similar to this at Toys R Us. Part of me was wondering if I could just buy that statue and then add joints to it, but nah, it didn't really, I never added joints to anything before, and I didn't really want to start with something so complicated. So, what did I use as the base figure? The answer, my friends, is Thranduil. This is the Elf King from the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movie. You know, the Desolation of Smaug. He came in this really cool 5-figure pack, which was on clearance at Toys R Us. And he basically kind of has a Dark Magician's look going down for him. He's really slim. He's wearing a long flowing garment. And he has kind of a Bishonen-y face. And he has a long staff. When I saw him, the only thing I regretted was that they only made him in the 4-inch scale. At least I wasn't able to find any 6-inch scale figures. Which is the same. If I had found a 6-inch scale figure of this guy, I would have used that because then it would scale with my Celtic Guardian and Harpy Lady. But 4-inch will have to do for now. When I took his robe off, I found out that although he had knees, which would have been useless because the robe was in the way, they didn't bother to give him hips. Everything between his hips and his knees is one solid piece. So the Legolas figure from the same set here in the brown tights, is actually built almost exactly the same way, except he actually has hip joints. So I swapped out the legs there so that my Dark Magician would have some leg posability. Sculpting on the legs is relatively minor. It's just those rings and the little spiral things on his kneecaps. Nothing too special. And this is followed up, of course, by a purple paint job with the lilac highlights, as you do. And then I moved on to other parts. Head. Thranduil has his little crown of branches and his long hair, which I left the branches to be an anchoring point for the hat, although I would cut off the ones in the front later, not pictured. And I cut off his long hair to sculpt in the Dark Magician's hair. Again, using my clay tools, I was able to texture it to look more like hair, and then build up around it into the hat, which is very, very large. I mean, this hat is ridiculously huge. I mean, it's one of the biggest wizard hats, like, ever. I mean, look at it from a more side-on perspective. It is massive. It's like a combination of a hood with a hat. I don't even know how to describe this thing. It's ridiculous. But I digress. Let's move on to making his clothing, his outer armor. The first thing I did was modify Thranduil's cloak so that it's slid up the sides, up to the hips, just like the Dark Magician's, and I shortened it so it doesn't quite reach the floor. And then I made that armor that's around his chest and shoulders. This was built in waves. First I built the chest and back plates along with the first shoulder pads, and I had to wait for this to harden so I could sculpt the second set of shoulder pads along with the more decorative aspects of the chest and back armor on top of them. This way I ensured that I didn't accidentally mush the bottom layers out of shape while putting on the top layers. Here's his head before I painted it. I had to stick it back onto the body so that I would make sure I was making enough clearance for when I make his collar. If you're wondering why it's black while everything else is white, that's because it's a plastic spoon. I sanded it into shape and put it on the head. If it looks a little bit overly large, that's because it's how big I had to make it in order to preserve Thranduil's neck articulation. The Dark Magician is the king of popped collars. And, seriously, this thing is freaking huge. I had to remove the head again so that I could sculpt around it and make it all smooth and pretty. And then paint it up. The outfit is a really dark, almost black purple, while the armor itself is a lighter purple with, lilac highlights. This Dark Magician is all of the purples. After all that crap with the clothing part, the arms seem almost anticlimactic. It's the same as the legs. There's a little spiral thing up on his shoulder and then a couple of rings on his elbow and wrist. And then they're painted, of course. The staff is Thranduil's regular staff, just with a little bit of things added around it. A couple of rings, a really nice little head thing. They make it into the Dark Magician staff. I painted it green with teal highlights. And I used a different green for the little gem set in the setting at the big end. So, with all the components, let's reassemble the Dark Magician and see how he came out. Here he is! The ultimate wizard in terms of attack and defense. The Dark Magician has all the points of articulation that Thranduil had. A ball-jointed neck, universal shoulders, universal elbows, wrist swivels. There is a waist swivel. And then he has Legolas's hips along with universal knees. No independent ankle articulation, but that's okay. And he looks pretty good. Despite the gigantic collar, he balances very well and can totally hold on to his staff. He can't hold it very tightly, but that was Thranduil's fault, not his. And, he has hip articulation, but I really wouldn't say he has hip posability. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that the articulation is still there, but I don't think I'll be using it all that much. He looks better when he's just standing. Well, that's 15 minutes of video, significantly longer than most of my custom videos go, so I'm going to sign off right here. Thank you for watching.